small business owner who is wondering, what the heck do I do now amid this crazy crisis that none of us prepared for? And you're wondering, what's the next steps I need to take in order to stay a viable business financially? If so, no worries, because we have Stephanie Mearse with us. She's my guest today. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
And I just want to give a little bragging about you because it's your track record and what you do is absolutely amazing. Stephanie is the vice president of, what's the name of the company that you are working for, Stephanie? Just
Uh,
remind me really quick.
yeah, it's Desert Capital Management Group.
Yeah. And then you've written a book,
Yep.
which is, tell me the title of your book.
Women of Perfection, Perfectly Imperfect.
Awesome. And then you also have a radio show and a podcast show
Yep.
about women empowerment and
Yes.
finances. And you're amazing. And so all these links will be on our website. But I want to dive into this because I want to talk. So what we're going to be talking about today is finances. But then also, Stephanie, I want to talk about your story. And I'm going to start with this because I think it's important for all of you at home to hear Stephanie's story because it has all to do with mindset, which of course that's what I'm all about. And so Stephanie, you were raised on the streets. You were homeless. Is that right?
Yeah. I was raised, so for a portion of my life, I did live on the streets with my drug addicted mother. And we lived either on the street or with drug dealers or gang members or in our car. And so I saw some really difficult things when I was at a very young age. And this was between the time that I was about, I think I want to say like 5 or 6 to until I was 8. And so it was very rough in that time period because not only were we living on the streets and eating out of garbage cans or eating however we could eat, we were also having a lot of other problems too, because when you're homeless, there's a lot of gang violence in those type of areas. There's sex trafficking. There's just so many different things that are very bad in those areas. So I've had a lot of really difficult things that happened to me as a child. But living on the streets was really hard. And so when I was 8 years old, I decided that I didn't want that life. So I saw a Hallmark movie, I'm not going to lie, a Christmas Hallmark movie. And I was like, that is the life I want. I guess everybody still thinks that, right?
Yeah.
And thinking, wow, this is so perfect and everything's beautiful and everyone loves each other and everybody's so nice. So I literally was like, that's the life I want right there. I don't want this. So I literally called my grandmother up and said, Grandma, we're in a really bad place. I did it very unexpectedly. And we ended up being taken away. My mom didn't even realize we were gone for a few months. And I ended up testifying against my mother in court when I was 8 years old. And it's amazing how at 8 years old, I decided to, and then we were adopted right after that. And so at 8 years old, I literally decided an entire different lifestyle for myself. And that was changing, not only seeing where I didn't want to be, but where I wanted to be, where I did want to go. And so going from being a child on the streets to being a millionaire before I'm 35, it's completely a mindset and how to go from where you don't want to be to where you want to be. It's all about making that transition within your mind.
Oh my gosh. What an amazing story. And we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into that too during this interview, because I also know there's a lot of fears. You and I talked off camera about how when you come from a traumatic upbringing, it is not uncommon to have a lot of fears. And regardless of what kind of upbringing you have, we all have fears, right? So we can all relate with that. But you have really, what you've been able to do to overcome your fears and to move on and to achieve your goals. And kind of from what it sounds like, Stephanie, you kind of set these aspirations. You're like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get there. And you do. So I want to dive into that mindset too. But before
Yeah.
we get there, I want to talk about finances, because right now during this COVID-19 pandemic, so many of us entrepreneurs, small business owners are kind of like, holy fook, what are we going to do? All of a sudden, the money has dried up, clients have disappeared. talk to us about this. Talk to us about, what are some things that we should be doing right now to help ourselves out financially in the event that maybe we didn't get the PPP loan or the SBA loan, or it's just not enough. What
Yeah.
should we be doing?
Yeah, so absolutely. So we are in a very different place than we've ever seen before. I mean, even in 2008, 2009, a lot of people will try to do a comparison, but the reality is it's a very different position because we don't know when the pandemic is going to end, if it does anytime soon, because and a lot of people don't know that, or are coming to the realization that, their business won't be exactly the same after this, right?
Right.
And so where we're at right now is, look at where we're at right now financially. Look at your books and be honest with yourself and say, okay, so how am I going to make this happen? What is my P&L? What does my balance sheet look like? What does my financial picture look like? As a business, what am I doing right now to bring in money? Okay, if this isn't working, find a new way to make money. So what I mean by that is you can still be doing the business that you're doing, but find a new way. So what I mean by that, and I'm just going to use an example, is, for example, if you are a physical business, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, the women's empowerment group that I also run, we physically met every single month. We can't do that anymore, right? So
Right.
we had to pivot. We had to pivot our business to make it to where we can still be meeting, still have that generation, that branding, that everything continuing, but not stop completely, right? So
Yes.
we made everything online. We pivoted our entire business to then go in that direction for right now. And honestly, we'll probably continue in this direction because we've been able to talk to so many more people around the world so much easier on this virtual, but we're still going to do our physical stuff when we can have that. So all it did in the long run is grow our business in a long-term place. So what I'm trying to say is, pivot your business. I also heard today that there was a hotel who was struggling massively, and that hotel couldn't afford to really keep going. So what they did is they created masks, face masks, and they made them for. They had the housekeepers make the masks and help out with that, as well as a few other people who were laid off. And they sold each mask for $10 a piece. They sold over 1,000 masks in a week. So that made it
Wow.
where, even though they don't have an income as a hotel right now, they were pivoting their business. And that may not be something long term, but they learned a new way to make an income when times are difficult. And everybody knows right now hotels are struggling. So
Yeah.
that's just a pivot. It's all about that. And really looking at what your financials are, what your financial goals are, and then where you're trying to go within 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever that is. You need to have a really good goal set, and don't let this stop you from your goals. So what I mean by that is there are always excuses. There's always an excuse to not do something. But if you find a new way to do it, think out of the box, you will be successful with a lot of hard work.
Yeah. I like that. And and even, the hospitality industry, you brought up hotels, making masks is not going to be their long-term game, right?
Yeah.
It's just what they need to do right now. One, to make some extra money, of course, but number two, also to get attention, to get their brand seen and to show that they are giving back and that they are connected to their community. And I think that's another important part to remember, that right now, this is a temporary situation. A year from now, we're all going to be in a much different situation. We're not all going to be, trying to scrounge up pocket change to go and
Yeah.
buy some groceries.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to remember all of that.
So something that I think is very important as well to bring up. So those people that are business people who own businesses right now that are in a financial difficulty. Okay. Something that I think really needs to be brought up is the IRS has massively changed rules and regulations based off of IRAs. So if you have an IRA, a 401k, if you have, not a lot of pensions are able to do this yet, but if you have these availabilities for right now, if you're really struggling, the IRS has made it to where you don't have to pay back that money right now if you were to take it out, and you're not taxed on that money up to 3 years. Yes. And so that's something that's brand new. You're also, if you take it out before you're 59 and a half, you also will not be penalized. So yes, so they've really opened up the rules and regulations because they know people are struggling. And most people who are business people need to have access to some kind of money. And they think that IRAs are not a possibility right now. And of course, I'm not promoting that you take money from your personal IRA to put it into a business, but there's a lot of business retirement accounts that you could be doing the same thing with. Or if you're in a business where you have to use that money, that's at least accessible to you, whereas before it was not, without a serious penalty and also tax implications.
So right now, I was unaware of this. So you can borrow out, even if you have not reached that age that you're allowed to, that typically you're allowed to take the money out, you will not be penalized. And you said something about 3 years. So after 3 years, you do have to start repaying it, or there will be a penalty.
Yeah.
Can
So
you dive into that?
you have up to 3 years to pay it back. So what I mean by that is within 3 years you would have to pay it back or take the taxes out. You still won't be penalized though.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. That's a game changer for a lot of people. So
exactly. It's one of the newest rules. It just came out recently. And honestly, a lot of business people just are just needing that a little extra cash. And so that is an opportunity for most people. And if you're confused on how that works, please reach out to a registered investment advisor, because they are the ones that can help you, guide you in the right direction to where you will not be hurt in a couple of years.
yeah. So thank you for saying that, because I think it's important for us to get creative. And what I've seen, I'm talking about the mindset. I'm diving into the mindset a little bit. What I've seen with a lot of business owners is that in the beginning, they freaked out and thought, oh my gosh, what if we go bankrupt? What if we can't make any payments and we lose our home or whatever? Or my business goes under. What am I going to do next?
Yeah.
And they stayed in that fear, and where focus goes, energy flows, right? So if you're focusing on the negative aspects of what can happen, that's naturally what you are going to see unfold. This is a proven fact. Whereas if you do the opposite and you think, okay, what am I going to do to pivot? What can I do to earn some income? What can I do to decrease, as you mentioned, some expenses right now so that we can get through? And you start focusing on that and putting energy towards that. That is when you see the companies. That's what a true entrepreneur is. And that's where you can see who's going to be successful and who's not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so I like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And another struggle that I'm seeing with businesses that have employees is that their employees went on unemployment, and now some of these businesses have gotten the PPP loan. And with do you know a lot about the PPP loan? Do you know some of the specifics?
Yeah, I know a good amount. Yeah.
Okay, good. So it's confusing. All of us are a bit confused. Well, other than you, but on this, are a bit confused, because from what I understand, as long as 75% of how you use the PPP loan is going towards payroll, then you do not have to pay it back. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the number is 75%. They did just approve more money to go out for the PPPs. I don't know if you saw that yesterday morning. So with that, there should be more loans going out to hopefully small businesses, not large businesses. And yes, from my understanding, it was 75% of the payroll that needs to be paid to the payroll, specifically for that to be a forgivable loan. However, and since we're in a very different place and the government is doing something new that they've never done before, we also have to anticipate that in a few years they may end up changing the rules on where it's at currently, and really honestly plan for it the right way moving forward as entrepreneurs, to be on the safe side.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everything is just kind of in flux right now. So let me ask you too. I know a lot of people did not get this first round of PPP loans because they were not clear on what they needed to provide. Also, banks weren't clear on what the parameters were, and so there's a lot of confusion going on between those of us who are entrepreneurs trying to figure it out, and then of course the
Mhm.
banks.
Yeah.
So do you have any suggestions? I know you're not a bank, but you're in the financial world. Do you
Yeah.
have any suggestions for those who are applying now? Apparently there's a third round of PPP loans,
Yeah.
on how to communicate with your bank to help the process and help you have a higher chance of getting approved.
Yeah, so this has been a ongoing struggle for most people, is even just finding out how to apply properly, right?
Hmm.
So what I'm noticing from a lot of small businesses is, so for example, if you go to Wells Fargo, if you go into the bank, nobody is going to help you. Okay, they'll
Yeah.
just say they'll refer you to the website. The website then just basically says, okay, well, I'll put you in line to be able to fill out the application. And then once you are done being in the line for the application, then you can fill it out. However, so I know somebody who had applied about 45 minutes after they opened up their application initial thing to be able to apply. It took them 2 weeks. Wells Fargo took 2 weeks to get that application to the person
Oh.
that they could actually fill out, and then the money was gone already, and
Mhm.
that person had filled it out 45 minutes after it had opened. So the reality is watch the news, watch when the money's coming out. And if you're working with a smaller bank already, most of the small banks have already given out a majority of their loans.
Mhm.
However, there are several who are still open to that, and the smaller banks tend to give to the smaller businesses. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know why exactly, but I'm telling you that seems to be a trend that we're seeing. Whereas the larger banks seem to be giving to the larger businesses because there's less supposed uh, you know, uh,
Risk.
liability. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So what the suggestions are is, honestly, follow, if you're a part of a small bank, follow up with your small bank immediately. Get in for that initial contact to be able to fill out the PPP. And then once you fill it out, basically keep watching that email every single day, because you can't call the bank and they won't help you. They just can't. There's nothing they can do at the actual physical banks. Trust me, we know a lot of people have tried.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I totally believe in the greasy wheel. Because we got the PPP loan, we applied half an hour after it went live, and we just kept on bugging the crap out of the person who was in charge of it at the bank. So ours is a regional bank, but they were not making decisions at that branch. They were making it in a whole different state. But what we
Hmm.
did, and I think this was probably the key, is we just kept on bugging, kept on saying, okay, so where's it standing? Can you give me some answers? So what was great about it is they connected us with someone who was making the decisions. And
Mm.
so we were in direct conversations with them. It did still take, I think, 2.5 weeks for our approval, but we did get approved. And so I think it was probably 3.5 weeks, at least 3 weeks before we got the money put into our account. But be the greasy wheel,
Yeah.
because it does make a difference, and you will stay at top of mind, because it's just no one's quite sure how this is all going
Yeah.
down right now, but
Yeah.
that did seem to help.
That's wonderful. Well, and you're the first person I've heard that actually received that PPP loan that I've talked to so far. Everybody else is still trying to get it or working toward it. So I think that's wonderful that you guys found a way around it. So I'll even let people know this.
Yeah, another thing that I saw is that if you already some of us have more than one bank account.
Yeah.
And so if you already have a bank loan with a bank account, go to that bank. You have a higher chance with that bank, even though this is not supposed to be geared on the risk of your business. It's not supposed to be geared on based on that. Banks naturally go to being bankers, and so they are looking for businesses that look like they have a lower risk. So if you already have a loan with a bank, go to that, because they know that you have a higher chance of paying it back. So those are just some facts that we've seen so far. But
I
yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yes. Do you have any other suggestions about how to stretch our dollar, where to put our dollars, anything else in that area?
Yeah, so stretching your dollar is very important. Really, really look at what's your income versus your what is your going out versus your income. That's very
Hmm.
important right now. And really figure, oh, do I need that extra for your business? Do I really need that extra, printer this week or whatever that may be that you may be getting that is not essential to your business at this moment, right? Really pare down on the things that are not necessary for one. For two, stretch your dollar in the sense that if you have extra money, because a lot of people who are who are in business usually have at least a savings or something. Honestly, the stock market is really low right now in comparison to where it's been. So a lot of people know that have been in this for a long time, well beyond how long I've been in the stock market. They know that when you see a low, that's when you buy in and you
Hmm.
ride it up. And that's how people get rich right there. So if you have that capability and you really are looking at your long-term goals and have the ability to lose that money, take advantage of the situation, because the world right now is at a good place to see it go forward in a positive direction.
Yeah, and I have so many questions as far as that goes, but we're going to save that for the next episode with you and dive into that, because that is a full episode, and I think it's really important to address that. But where I'd like to go right now is I want to talk more about the mindset. And in your book, your book is all about overcoming fears to achieve success, to achieve your goals, to achieve those crazy things that you want. But maybe in your head, you're telling yourself, oh no, I can never be wealthy. I can never be financially free. I can never go to Europe, or, whatever it is. Let's talk about that a little bit. And I want you to start with your story that you told me, Stephanie, about your fear of heights.
Oh Lord. Absolutely. Okay. So I had the worst fear of heights and planes, like of flying up up in a plane. And I mean, to the point of whenever I would get on a plane, I would laugh hysterically, extremely loud, where I had the entire plane laughing at me because I was laughing and freaking out so bad. And I mean, it was just hilarious. I'm not going to lie. I kind of wish, somebody would have videotaped me. I'm not going to lie. But what the way I overcame that was my mentor straight up came to me and said, you know what? The only way you're going to get past these fears is to tackle them head on. Is to tackle them and really see what is the fear and how do I fix it. And it's not for every person. Not every person can go directly to the point and really push through. Some people need therapy, some people need coaching. However, if you recognize that fear and you can take it head on in one way or another, whatever's best for what fits you, it's the best thing you can do for yourself. So what I did is I ended up going with my mentor, and in the entire office we went skydiving because it got me over my fear of heights and planes. And I was the first one out of that plane. It was one of the scariest experiences of my entire life, but it was worth every single second, because at that moment it literally broke every single fear I had that was implemented in me from the past to the future, to the whole, every single part of fear. It literally broke this hold that fear had on me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I jumped out of that plane, I didn't know that it was going to make such a huge difference. But since then, I am so thankful and so excited that my mentor had suggested this, for one, and two, was the second one out of the plane with me. But what the best part about the whole thing is that one choice, again, made it to where I have lived a better life than I even knew I could live. And just the past, I think that was 6 or 7 years ago. And it's amazing how much I've done since then. That made it to where I was no longer afraid to start a women's empowerment group. I was no longer afraid to be a president of a nonprofit. I was no longer afraid to write my book and explain, and tell my story. Before that, there was no way I would have talked about or even done any of that, because I would have been too afraid.
So your initial fear was heights and planes, two
Yeah.
things. However, you faced it in the scariest possible thing that you could think of. You faced it, you overcame it. But what I love about this is that not only did you overcome those two phobias, but it's helped you in so many other areas. That's incredible. And so what I want to say about that is I talk to my clients a lot, and every one of us has a fear, right? We have
Mhm.
some kind of fear somewhere that's holding us back. Sometimes we're not aware of it. But once we can pinpoint it, that's step one, becoming aware of it. But then number two, facing it and dealing with it. And that is where a lot of people get stuck. I call it our personal book of laws. And we all have these personal book of laws that we have created in our head that we use to protect us from shame, embarrassment, any
Mhm.
kind of negativity. And a lot of people live in that for their whole life. They will
Yeah.
stay in this little box to protect them from being embarrassed. Maybe they won't go speak on stage, maybe they won't go after that real job that they want, or that advancement, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And that causes depression. It causes all kinds of negativity. But once
Mhm.
you can learn to face it and look at it like you did, maybe not to that extreme, but
It was pretty.
I mean, it's life altering, and it
Yeah.
becomes this muscle that you build. So I'm guessing, Stephanie, that now that you haven't overcome every single fear, but when you do see a fear, it's easier for you to face it and to deal with it. Is that true?
Absolutely. So my biggest thing was, and what I learned the most that day was my biggest fears that I literally couldn't even get onto a ladder without freaking out.
Mm.
And that day I literally learned if I don't die from getting over this fear, then I can move on to anything. Like I can literally do anything. And honestly, I've taken on pretty much everything that comes in my head, and I said, yeah, let's do it, let's try it out. And yeah, I failed. There's a lot of times I failed, but that fear of failure is way worse than failing and actually really actually having that experience and growing, in my opinion.
Right. I totally agree. Yep. If you never push yourself to do something that is scary, there's no reward.
Hmm.
Right. And so you have to fail so that you can, one, to learn, but number two, so that you can relish when you do have the successes too. But
Exactly.
it's all part of the journey, and it's all so important. So I love what you've done. And let's not forget, let's go back to the beginning. Stephanie was homeless from 5 to 8 years old. She found a way out, and she became a millionaire by the time she was 35 years old. Wow. That is amazing. So, Stephanie, I know everyone's like, okay, how do we find this lady? Where is she? How do we get a hold of her? So tell us where to find you. And then I think also you have an offer for all the listeners today.
I sure do. So my website is stephaniemearse.com, and for my book, my speaking engagements, podcasts, and everything else. And then if you're interested in joining a women's empowerment group that genuinely just wants to love and care about each other, check out empowerhour.net, because we really do care about women and helping one another. And then I also want to offer a free copy of my book. I would email that to you. Just text me at 474747, and you would get a copy of my full book, not just a couple of chapters.
Okay, gosh, that's awesome. And her book is amazing. You need to get this book. And I totally invite you to go check out all the sources that Stephanie just shared, because she is such a unique person, and the things that she's been able to do, we can all learn from her. So anyway, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your wisdom and all your knowledge. And I look forward to our next episode together.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.